What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golic Jr. That is me. With me, as always, super producer Brandon Newman, my father, Mike Golic Sr. Dad, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. We got a new batch of millionaires coming out again. These are always the young ones, right? I mean, the NBA draft, the guys are usually 21, 22, some cases 24, 25. You look down the list of the probable draft picks here, and it's 19, 19, 20, 19. It's amazing, these young players and how athletic they are and coming into this league, going against grown men. It's pretty wild. This is always fun, too, just to see these long human beings be fitted for custom suits and what kind of flair they have in wearing them.
Yeah, and I feel like we're going to get the ultimate version of that with Big Vic, right? Victor Wembanyama is the biggest version of that, but also he's a guy with a lot of self-confidence and a guy who seems like he knows he's swagged out and is going to try and push the limits on that. Very excited to see him. And Scoot Henderson, too, is another one. When you look at him going into this, not as tall and lanky, he's more 6'2", so really, he's probably the one, if you're watching the NBA draft for purely fashion purposes, to keep an eye on. I was reading last night, so Scoot is one of 7 kids, I believe, big-time basketball family, and his sisters are all helping manage him. One helps manage his social media, and he's got one of his sisters who's actually working as a stylist and helping him pick out clothes, and so the outfit's going to be a family affair, and he's one of the few NBA players that actually inhabits a body with clothes that you can buy off the rack pretty comfortably, because you're right, I don't know who is going to be outfitting Victor Wembanyama, but that is one of the most, there should be a draft combine for that, for the guy who's going to tailor those suits.
So let me ask you this. Do you think the Thompson twins, the identical twins, will dress alike or different? Is it time for them to go different? Now they're going to go on 2 different teams, be in 2 different cities. It's a great story. I mean, it's a phenomenal story that these identical twins are going to go in the top 10. I saw a story on them in one of the morning shows, one of the morning news shows that they were on. And at 9 years old, they had, like, a lack of a better term, a vision board of how to prepare themselves. They wanted to play in the NBA. They were 9. They were dribbling a basketball 2 miles with their left hand. That was one of the things, a certain amount of push-ups every day. They were doing that at 9 years old. Again, identical twins will go in the top 10. This is going to be pretty cool, but will they dress alike?
Have they been dressing alike? Like, I feel like you
leave
that know. Behind once you're like 6 years old. Like,
maybe for this they will. I don't think they will, but who knows, man? I think that would be pretty cool.
I just love how once you're a twin, you're branded for life as that weird connection. Like, I have a goddaughter, our buddy Kyle Rudolph, his oldest daughters, Andy and Finn, are identical twins, and they stopped dressing alike years ago. Like, thank God, by the way, for a while, everyone looked so similar. I'm always wondering, like, oh, these guys going to show up to the draft and we're going to have to, like, paint one of their toenails a different color so we know which twin is which. Could you parent trap the NBA draft and have a twin show up on a different team? One team drafts one of the twins and the other likes the venue more, and so they're like, you know what, we'll just send that twin to that environment, and all of a sudden, instead of having to Eli Manning your way out of a situation where you strong arm it, now you just have a different twin get on the plane, swap IDs, and then go from there. It's a simple case of identity theft amongst family.
It's a great thought. As soon as the first one gets picked, the other one should go up and act like they were the one called and do all the interviews and everything.
Man,
they could have so much fun with this.
Now, you know what? Now you're right. Now I'm rooting for the twins to go up there dressed identically and try and bamboozle everybody in the NBA media on draft night and make this happen. With that in mind, we got a great show for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out, DraftKings YouTube channel under the Gojo with Mike Golic Jr. podcast tab. And also Monday through Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com and Samsung TV Plus. Fun one today. Brad Williams, comedian, going to join us here on the show. You can check out his tour, BradWilliamsComedy.com. He's going to be in Hawaii this weekend performing at the Blue Note out there. And Dad, you and I had an absolute blast talking to him in the lead up. He's a diehard Lakers fan. Friends of the Lebitard show will be familiar. Brad's been on their show a bunch of times. He gets the show over there. And he has maybe the best Magic Johnson story I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah, he really does. What a fun guy. He said we had met in an airport, he and I, a year or so ago, and not shockingly, I don't remember because I'm horrible at that stuff. But he did say, and I was happy about it, he said, "You were very nice." I'm like, okay, all right, thank you for that. I'm glad I was. But I look forward to going and seeing him. We'll obviously have some of the places where he's going to be, but man, he's a funny dude.
He is incredibly funny dude. You guys are going to love that. Great time to sit down with him. Dad, I want to take you through a tour of headlines that almost broke my brain this morning, but I feel like for a lot of people waking up, especially on the East Coast, especially in Boston, Massachusetts in particular, there are some who woke up to news that rattled their world. Dad, I've been amazed at how attached to Marcus Smart Boston Celtics fans are. As we woke up this morning, for anyone that missed it, last night, the Boston Celtics were a part of a 3-team trade that ultimately involved the Washington Wizards and the Memphis Grizzlies. In the 3-way deal, Memphis will receive Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics will receive Kristaps Porzingis from the Washington Wizards, and the Washington Wizards will receive Tyus Jones from the Memphis Grizzlies, sources told ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Now, Dad, apparently this was after we saw the trade rumored earlier in the day fell apart that would have involved those teams, but then removing the Memphis Grizzlies and adding in the Los Angeles Clippers. That was supposed to move Malcolm Brogdon from a backcourt in Boston that's log-jammed with guys that are making a bunch of money as they're coming up on having to paying Jason Tatum and Jason Brown. So it made sense they were going to have to move somebody, and it made sense that their first choice for that was Malcolm Brogdon, the former Sixth Man of the Year, but a guy who'd battled some injury stuff, and they had to make this last-minute pivot because Kristaps Porzingis had a player option that was due at midnight that apparently he's going to opt into to help Boston so they can negotiate a long-term deal later on. But in the interim here, as they've got to worry about paying their stars first, he's going to offer them some flexibility, opt into that player option so that they'd actually be able to do this. Because if he hit free agency, there's no way. And to make that happen, because Dad, you and I both watch a fair amount of basketball. I watched nigh a bit of Wizards basketball last season, so it was news to me that apparently Kristaps Porzingis was out here averaging 23-8 over the course of last year and actually managed to stay healthy a little bit and apparently became incredibly coveted by Boston, so much that they would just jettison Marcus Smart out into Memphis to try and go help them pick up the Ja Morant suspension pieces. Did this surprise you at all, Dad, given what Marcus Smart has meant to that team as an emotional leader, as a defense and grit guy, or is this the cost of doing business?
It's just the cost of doing business. I mean, we get attached, and Boston fans have gotten attached to Marcus Smart, who's the personality of that team, right? And he kind of either can get a team going, he can settle a team down. I love what he does for that team on and off the court. But they needed another big man, right? Al Horford's back, but he's 36, 37. He's going to have to cut his minutes back. I think it was at 30 minutes a game. Robert Williams, who I love, especially on the defensive side, he's got some knee issues. So they needed another big man. And we know Porzingis is a versatile big man. As you said, he opted in $36 million. He opted into. So they needed to get another big guy. So this is the cost of doing business. This is a guy who you associate with Boston because normally his hair is green. So you really associate him with the Celtics. And I love his personality. So the biggest question to me is, what color is he going to color his hair in Memphis? That's Boston got what they wanted. They wanted another big man. So Marcus goes Memphis. What color is his hair?
That light blue is a wonderful color. It's not quite Chargers blue, but it's close, and I feel like would make a great color for hair. So he's at least got that to fall back on. He's going to get plenty of minutes and bad three-point attempts to chuck up while Ja Morant's out during the first quarter of the NBA season. Dad, I'm surprised that Boston fans are surprised here. After what they did with Isaiah Thomas a few years ago, shouldn't everyone realize that loyalty, even in Boston, isn't something that's any different from anywhere else in sports? Isaiah Thomas was out there playing with his busted up hip in a way that affected the rest of his NBA career, and they still shot him off into the ether as well. Like, this is unfortunately how it works. And I get everyone saying, well, Brad Stevens, coach Marcus Smart. None of it matters in the bottom line. They have now got the looming specter of that new CBA with all the new salary restrictions that are going to be in there. You've got the two best players on your team that you've got to keep there with massive amounts of money, and you've got changes that needed to be made elsewhere. And for Marcus Smart, for all the leadership and things that we talk about, that was still a team that got in the holes they did this postseason, looked in critical moments like they were still unsure who was going to have to step up and be the dog. And so if you're not seeing the benefits there, it's like, all right, we can have those same crisis of identity with a backcourt that's got 20 million less going out to a guy who's also kind of a similar skill set.
Listen, I said this for the years I was playing. I said this for the years doing a show, whether it's a sports franchise, a company. Throw loyalty out the window. 99.9% of the time, loyalty doesn't mean a damn thing. The job of a franchise, the job of a company is to be as good, win a championship, or a company outside of sports as profitable as they can be. And you make a move to put your company in that position. So in this case, the Boston Celtics, they needed a big man. That's the way they felt they need to get better. So you do what you have to do. So loyalty is thrown around in such a way of people are shocked that there isn't more loyalty. That is the least shocking thing in the world to me. There is no loyalty. Teams are out for themselves. Individual players are out for themselves.
Dad, the other thing I saw this morning as we're gearing up for draft night, we're very excited to see these young people change their lives, but we know, and we've talked about all this week, there's so much else swirling around this. We've tossed and turned with the Damian Lillard piece of this. As we had the reports earlier in the week that Damian Lillard didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay in Portland. He wanted the team to get better. We heard Portland putting together a package to try and acquire Bam Adebayo, reportedly, all these things. And I saw Brian Windhorst this morning on ESPN reference that in the past, on the record, Damian Lillard has said he doesn't want to be part of a youth movement, doesn't want to be there for a rebuild around a young player, and then proceeded to say that everything he's hearing coming out of league sources is saying that the Portland Trailblazers, who have the third overall pick, so we've got the Spurs who are going to take Victor Wembanyama at number 1. We've got the Charlotte Hornets at number 2, who it sounds like the betting favorite now is Brandon Miller out of Alabama to go at number 2, the 6'9" wing. And then Scoot Henderson out of the G League Ignite is likely slotted to go number 3. And it sounds like, based on what Wendy's hearing, that that's going to be the way that Portland goes about their pick. And so according to Brian Windhorst, teams around the league are getting their offers ready right now. Dad, it does make you wonder if these little bits of information we were hearing about Dame wanting to stay and wanting the team to get better were contingent on them moving that number 3 pick on someone like a Zion Williamson or another player who's been a veteran around this league to avoid this, because this doesn't sound like the timeline that Damian Lillard has signed up for. And now all of a sudden, I think we're back in business for Dame's summer coming up in the NBA.
Well, I mean, it could be kind of twofold. Dame saying he wants to stay in Portland. He has said that in the past, but also now saying I'm not ready for a rebuild. So now it's kind of on Portland. So Damian Lillard can kind of always be like, hey, I wanted to stay in Portland and I want to win right now. You know, I'm getting up there in age. I want to win right now. And that's what I want the team to do. And if the team is going to draft a youngster at the 3rd pick overall, a 19 or 20-year-old, well, you know, he's kind of let his feelings be known. So if he does get traded, it's more on, hey, I wanted to stay there and be on a winning team right now. I didn't want to rebuild. I wanted to win now. They went another direction and they traded me, but I wanted to stay. You know, there's kind of that as well, right? Because he's been saying it for so long. I want to stay in Portland. I want to stay in Portland. Well, if you get traded outside of Bradley Beal, who was the only player who had no trade clause, you know, Damian Lillard doesn't have one of those. So if he gets traded, he can just throw his hands up and say, hey, I wanted to stay. But they felt it was time, you know, to move on. So he kind of saves that from the difference of saying, I want to stay in Portland, trade me. I don't want to be in Portland anymore.
I guess I just don't feel like there's any world where anyone would believe that Portland would trade Damian Lillard without his blessing at this point, right? Because if you're them and you bring Scoot in, who, for anyone that hasn't seen Scoot Henderson in the G League Ignite, 6'2", incredibly athletic guard, not a dynamic shooter, but would absolutely benefit from playing alongside someone like Dame. I just can't imagine Portland would actually be able to move him without that being something Dame signs off on at this point, because it's not like, you'd get a haul back for him, I'm sure, and there's some pieces you can build around, but none of the pieces you can build around would be as good as building around Scoot Henderson and Damian Lillard if you're Portland.
No, I would agree with that. Damian is 32, but I mean, average, I think, his age last year in points, I believe. I mean, he's still an excellent player. I get it. I mean, I understand what they want to do there, or at least I think. And I agree with you. If you go with Scoot Henderson and pair him with Damian Lillard, I mean, what a great guy for Scoot to learn from. But it does seem like it is setting the table a bit for Damian to possibly trade it. And that's just great for the fans, for us, just to see where he's going to end up. Is Miami now back in the equation again?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Brian Windhorst knows how to get people to watch the NBA draft tonight for reasons outside of who's just getting picked. Like, we know the obvious choices at the top. We're very excited for that. This bit of gamesmanship. Now, and I'm sure it's actually rooted in some real feelings. I'm not accusing Brian Windhorst of lying out here for the sake of content, but we've seen conveniently timed releases of information that happen to coincide with major events before, and so I am very excited to watch this all play out tonight. So we've got Dame hanging in the balance. We've got Zion hanging in the balance tonight. Dad, we've also got my sanity hanging in the balance this morning here. I want to read you 3 headlines that I saw immediately upon waking up this morning and then immediately wanted to go back to bed after. Are you ready? I'm going to give you in the exact order that I saw them this morning. I woke up this morning and the first headline I saw was, "Your stepdad is lost at sea. California man whose billionaire stepfather is on missing sub asks OnlyFans model to sit on him for 30 minutes after pleading for prayers as he triggers a war of words with Cardi B over a Blink-182 concert." That's the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning. Followed by, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk agree to cage fight. And then wrapped up by this doozy from a guy that you got to work with a bit last year, Mike Florio over at Pro Football Talk, that said, if the Cardinals admitted tampering with Jonathan Gannon distracted him enough to contribute to the Eagles' loss in Super Bowl 57, could the Cardinals and or the league have civil liability to those who placed legal wagers on the Eagles to cover? Dad, I have never so desperately needed training camp to start in my life. That assault on my brain this morning was the absolute tipping point. We need the offseason to be over now.
So the first one I'll throw out is the Gannon, the tampering, which the Cardinals admitted to. Gannon had an interview the day after the Super Bowl. The Cardinals admitted to tampering. They swapped draft picks. So that was taken care of that way. But then the thought process continued by Mike Florio saying, well, if they tampered and he was worrying about the interview, was he not worrying that much about the game plan? And now bring the betting in. I'm throwing that one out. There is no shot, in my opinion, there's going to be any kind of lawsuit that has any chance of winning if anybody who bet on the game and lost says, I'm going to look for a way to get my money back here and sue the league, the Cardinals, Gannon, everybody, throw it up against the wall and see what happens. I don't see any way anything happens.
Oh, no, this is me just getting got by Florio's game of being the conspiracy theory guy. I fully admit I'm the mark and he's triggering me with this morning. He 100% won that.
So the cage match, let's hope they knock each other out. And as far as the dude whose stepdad is trapped, I mean, Cardi B going after him in a video and him going back after Cardi B, it's surreal as this guy's stepfather is unfortunately close to air running out in that sub as they continue to search for it.
We're in a very strange place in life, which is why we're going to bring in Brad Williams to help us sort through the chaos when we come back here next.
Every time someone says, "Oh, I met you," and then they don't say like at a like a get together, a function where you're in that headspace, Like whenever someone says like, "Oh yeah, I met you at the airport," I'm like, I'm miserable at airports.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you were going to catch my dad anywhere where he would have been miserable, it would have been at a restaurant. Those are all my memories as kids at like the height of Mike and Mike, when dad's knee deep in whatever his entree is and someone comes over then. And it's one thing, like someone could come and say hi, people be very nice, but try and start unloading their takes and have a little bit of sports talk debate there. And dad's trying to eat. And that was the only time I would see him kind of bristle. So airport probably fine. If you had caught him at dinner, all bets are off.
Yeah, all bets are on. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. It's kind of strange that with your guys' industry, that's the thing that people get with you is they come up and they have takes and they want to tell you and they want to talk sports, which is, great. But I'm sure at some point you're like, I'm done getting takes.
Yeah.
Or it's probably like when people come up to me and try to tell me a joke, I know the joke.
Oh.
I know the joke is going to be horrible. It's going to be it's going to be a joke that I read in a joke book when I was 9.
That's almost got to be worse. I think of it like actors who have like a really defining role, and then from then on, everyone comes and running up to them. Like when people do that to you when you get off stage or like after shows when you're hanging around? Is that where you get it most?
I mean, right now it's in airports. To be honest with you, when I'm off stage after a show, great. I'm still in that mode. I'm still in that headspace of, oh, you just saw me perform. Oh, you just saw me. You saw me do my thing. So in my mind, I'm still doing my thing. But like when I'm at an airport or God help you with my family, that's when I'm not doing my thing. And so I totally get it, Senior, why you would have some you'd be kind of like ready to go if they came up during family dinner time. The worst one I wasn't even a part of. The worst one, I was somewhere else. It was my wife and my daughter, and they were at a grocery store, and someone ran up to my daughter, who at the time was 2, and yelled out, "That's Brad Williams' baby," and ran up and like started doing like the little Gucci goo right to her. And this is like pandemics going on. And my wife is a martial artist, so I'm really thankful that I didn't have a murder charge on our hands, because that was close.
Oh, that would have been something if she came home and said, "Hey, Brad, I just whooped this dude's ass who came a little too close to our daughter."
Yeah. We got to lawyer up.
But that's how it is, like sports people want to try and impress me with their knowledge of sports. And I think people want to show that they're funny just like you. Because I found myself doing it. When we've had comedians on the show over the years, I try and say something funny. And at times I'll catch myself and I'm saying, what are you doing? What they're the funny one. Let them do their thing. Don't try and go to their level.
Yeah. And especially as a little person, you really don't want to go to mine. I know you've been through it. The football injuries probably prevent that from being a good thing. Do I call you Gojo? How do I do junior and senior?
Just that way.
Yeah. Honestly, and the Gojo thing, you'll appreciate this as someone who is a friend of the Dan Levitard show. That came from those guys because I went down to do shows with them, and me and Mike Ryan were both mics in the room, and it's like, well, he's the Mike whose house this actually is, so they needed another thing. So yeah, junior senior works. It's all the same. I've been called way worse.
Yeah, on said social media.
Yes,
so,
or by his coaches. So
yeah. The social media, it's interesting now. If we're talking about the generational divide, like with the draft coming up, I saw Brandon Miller got interviewed and they asked him about the LeBron Jordan debate. And he said, LeBron's not my GOAT. That's Paul George. And it made me realize that I think we've gotten to a point now where I don't think kids coming up even know that GOAT is an acronym anymore. I think they just think it means their favorite player, because it sounds like that's what he was saying. I'm praying to any God that'll listen that that's what he's saying, because if he actually thinks that might somehow jump to the top of the list of questions about drafting him at that spot.
Right. Oh, it's like, and we've gone through it to where GOAT used to mean scapegoat. It's the person that that you blame people. Now greatest of all time. And it's either, it's funny, Junior, because I was thinking that it's either that or now these kids are so social media savvy where he goes, I'm going to say something stupid and it's going to trend. And then I've got all the attention and now I could build my brand or whatever that is. They've seen the playbook of Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. And now they're just like, I'm going to say something absolutely ridiculous because I know people will be outraged about it. And thankfully, the thing that he says that's absolutely ridiculous is a sports take that has little to no consequence in the real world. It's not, someone on a news channel saying like, yeah, we should totally blame these types of people for this thing where an audience might do something horrible because of it. So I'm hoping he's crazy like a fox, or like you say, he doesn't know what GOAT actually means. Because if he's actually a basketball player that's going to be in the NBA and thinks that Jordan and LeBron are nothing compared to PG3, wow, we're gonna have some problems there.
I mean, that is a monster. Wow, that's just unbelievable to think about.
I do like the idea that he'd be trying to get on Paul George's podcast now, though, because Podcast P is sort of doing well. So maybe this is just him fishing for the invite. We'll see if this ends up being a chess not checkers move, Dad.
Well, in that case, start saying nice things about Draymond Green. Or say Matt Barnes is the GOAT because he's got a good podcast. Like why not just throw all that stuff out there? Like try to get on. So I mean that's what I did. I always talked about how handsome the Golic family was, and now look at me.
Look at that.
Here I am.
Look at how quickly we got you on, right? To
talk
about it. Yeah, we certainly are in the hot take society. There's no doubt about it. But I want to ask you, because so many greats have played there, and you're a Laker fan. Who, in your mind, is the all-time greatest Laker?
See, for me, Magic Johnson.
Yep.
He's Mr. Laker. The titles, the charisma, the energy he brought to that city, the perfect player at the perfect time. To you can't have anyone else and have showtime. It doesn't happen. Kobe's number 2, but man, to me it's just got to be Magic. And you could tell me that Kobe's the better overall player, I'll believe it. You show me the numbers, absolutely. But it's like Jeter over A-Rod.
Yeah.
A-Rod statistically is the better baseball player. But Derek, you're not going to put him on the Yankee Mount Rushmore over Derek Jeter. And then A-Rod was better at shortstop, but they moved A-Rod to third because Jeter's there. And Jeter's Mr. Yankee. He's the captain. He is the face of that franchise. And I kind of feel like that's a fair comparison with Magic and Kobe, where, yeah, Kobe's probably the better player, but Magic Johnson, and he's had every job in the Lakers since, whether he wanted it or not. He was coach when he didn't want to be coach. He was GM when he didn't want to be GM. He has the famous meme of him shaking his face, just going, "I'm not going to be here." Like, the fact that he's remained in the city, remained a Laker, now owns a part of the Dodgers. To me, it's Magic Johnson.
It is pretty amazing. Like you said, he is so charismatic that he was able to overcome that. He literally walked out on the job at the organization that loved him and he loved in return. And he is still a beloved figure in the entire Lakers community and fan base.
So a quick Magic Johnson story. Okay. And I don't know if you guys can quote unquote turn it off, but there are times when I should have turned it off as a comedian that I cannot turn off.
Oh, no.
If the joke is there, I have to make it. So, through an LA radio station that you may be familiar with out here, Junior, K-Rock, they get me to go on the Lakers red carpet. This is the year where they had Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, Kobe, and there was the fourth. There was like a fourth that I can't remember. I'm sorry, but it's just Pau Gasol, of course. Sorry, Pau Gasol.
Yeah, sure you go.
That guy. So yeah, Pau, Nash, Dwight, and Kobe. So I'm on the red carpet and I'm interviewing them. Dwight Howard grabbed the microphone from me, held it near his penis. That was awkward. And then you had Pau Gasol who was just a sweetheart, like bent over, and I'm like, "Pow, this is probably hurting you. Stand up, please." He's like, "No, I'll bend over for you." I'm like, "I'm a fan. I want you to be in good health."
Yeah,
So,
please no.
so then Magic Johnson comes in. I'm born in '84. Lakers have been my team. I used to fall asleep listening to Chick Hearn call games. So meeting Magic Johnson is one of those holy crap moments for me where I've got to get it together and realize that I technically have a job to do at that moment. And I start listing his career accomplishments, saying, "You've done this, you've done this, you've done these many MVPs, the championships, the awareness, the stuff you've done in the community in terms of your charity, in terms of starting businesses in the black communities that are like truly revolutionary and social justice. And now you're part of the Dodgers." And then I stop and I go, "What's it like to be the world's greatest human?" And he gives a very thought out, well answer, but he ends it with, "And if I could do it all over again, I would not change a thing." And me as the comedian,
no. No.
See, you guys see it coming.
No.
The smart thing would have been for me just to go, "You're right, thanks, Magic." But I had to go, but I stopped and went, "Not one thing, not one, not one." I've got one. I like, what I know about your life. I got one thing that I could possibly say that you may have wanted to happen differently. But
what did he say?
I think then a PR person grabbed him and just started moving him up. Yeah, it was like I said, "Not one thing," and he goes, "I'm good," and he starts like walking away. So
listen, you said what everybody who was listening to that thought. There is no doubt about it, because we hear that all the time. "Oh, I have no regrets. I wouldn't change one thing." I find that hard to believe that not in everybody's life there isn't at least one thing you might change. And with Magic, it's plastered all over the walls of what you possibly would change. So, I got to ask you. I've talked about this so many times on air. When an athlete does something bad on the field or something doesn't go the way, I've always said, I will always remember the worst plays over the best plays. Always.
Yes.
They stick out of my mind. So
Yeah.
I have to ask you, doing stand up, what's the one that bombed the most? What's the joke or the situation that bombed the most?
These are the stories that late night at the Comedy Store we pass around. We don't like to pass around. Same thing what you said. We don't go like, "Oh, it was this theater. It was electric, standing ovation." I got carried off on a chair. Like, no, it's not that. It's where did you bomb the worst, and that's what we all talk about. And me comes very easy, very quickly. Someone wrote to me on social media and said, "Hey, we're a big fan. We've seen your show. We would like you to do stand-up comedy at our wedding. We would like you to do stand-up at our wedding." And I said, "Absolutely not." And they said, "We'll pay you whatever that was." And I said, "Well, okay. Yeah, let's do it. Let's where are you getting married?" And thankfully it was in town. So it goes, they tell me it goes best man, maid of honor, you, and then other proceedings. And I go, "Cool, I get a couple of opening acts. Awesome." They'll get and they're gonna stink, and then I'll come in and have real jokes. It'll be great. And I got information about the couple. I wrote some original bits. The maid of honor goes on. Best man speech, I don't remember. The maid of honor speech, well, it starts off with her saying, "Well, we all know that the elephant in the room is that we're so sorry that Mom passed away a week ago." So that's what she does. And she gives a wonderful speech, a tribute to her mother. And it goes for about 10 minutes, just not a dry eye in the house. And I'm crying, but for a different reason. I know that I have to follow this. I will now give you the exact words that were used after let's raise a glass to mom. Okay, the exact words, nothing is added, nothing is taken away. They go, all right, let's raise a glass to mom, cry, tear, clink, sip. And now the comedy of Brad Williams. No intro, no, hey, we're going to try something new, not we're going to lighten anything up. It's just, and now the comedy of Brad Williams. And I proceeded to lay the biggest egg. Like my jokes were just not hitting. People were shaking their heads. So, and this is a perfect example, perfect question you ask because of what happened literally this past weekend. This past weekend, I'm at the club Stand Up Live, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, which is a wonderful comedy club. While I'm on stage, about halfway through my set, the fire alarm goes off. And at first I'm like, all right, couple of jokes, whatever. And then like, someone will turn it off.
Right.
No one turned it off. No one's turning it off. I get a note from someone on the staff saying, hey, there's no fire, but this is all over the block, like the whole block of downtown Phoenix. All the fire alarms are going off for some weird reason, but just, you can do whatever you want. And I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna make this work. And I stayed on stage. Guys, that fire alarm went off. They timed it 23 minutes.
Oh,
23
wow.
minutes. But I stayed on stage and I told the audience, like, hey, this sucks, but we could just leave and you guys can go home and you wasted your money on your babysitters, or we can stay and make this work. And the audience was so good. I was timing jokes so the punchlines would hit in between the sirens.
That's a pro right there.
Oh my God. It's
man.
The hardest I've ever had to work on stage, and for so long, because there's only so much. Like after the 9th fire alarm joke, it's like, we get it. Like I had to move on. And but man, that was a crazy show. I ended up doing about an hour and a half. I usually do about an hour. And yeah, the audience was just amazing the whole time. And now they have a story. They have a story that they will never forget. They'll say, because I was at another show. Man, I've had so many of these. I was at another show in Hartford, Connecticut, at the Hartford Funny Bone, where there was a blackout in the middle of the show. All the mic went dead. Everything went dead. So I had the audience take out their phones, hit their flashlights so they could still see me. Yeah. And then I would just scream my jokes and finish my set. And to this day, people come up to me like, I was at the blackout show. And it's awesome. It's a memory. So now I'll have people coming up to me for the rest of my career around Arizona. They were like, I was at the fire alarm show.
My God.
That's great.
All right. Well, you know what? Now I have to say this PSA. Everyone check out bradwilliamscomedy.com to get tickets. Out on tour right now. And if you're at the show, you're going to be at the Blue Note in Hawaii this weekend. I saw nobody pull the fire alarm this weekend. For the love of God, please. We don't need to force a memory. Brad will make it for you this weekend.
It's a good show. I like my current show. It's great. The fans seem to like it. I don't need help. I don't need an incident. I mean, yes. So yes, I'm in Hawaii this weekend. That's my reward for having to deal with the 25-minute fire alarm.
So this is a fully cooked show. It needs no extra seasoning. Brad, we appreciate your time today, man. We'll have to have you back here soon. Enjoy the show this weekend, and we're praying for no fire alarms.
We're praying for no fire alarms. I mean, when I was on the Lebitard show, they experienced a blackout the day I was there.
Oh, so wow.
This might be a trend. Maybe there's a dwarf special power that I'm not aware of, where I just walk into the room and things short circuit. Forgive the pun.
But
like, something happens. Yeah, I was at the Lebitard show. They had a blackout. I went to the Marlins game the next night. They had a blackout at the Marlins game, and then the fire alarm goes off at my show. There might be a trend here.
Wow, there might be you. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't invite me to your open heart surgery.
All right, time to finish this thing off. Send everybody off into the rest of their day so they can get ready for the NBA draft. With this, that, and the third, 3 quick stories. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Let us know what else you want to see and hear. And, Dad, we got baseball popping its way in here. All the Reds had to do was go on an 11-game win streak for us to actually talk about them. A team that lost 100 games last year is now leading the NL Central and just had Jake Fraley hit a tie-breaking 2-run homer in the 8th to help rally and get them to 11 games this year. They have been a cardiac team, to say the least. It was the 26th time this season that they've come back to win a game, and the 14th time rallying from a multi-run deficit, both tops in Major League Baseball this season.
See, that to me is the great thing, because it gives you that mental part and that mental attitude in the dugout that you're never out of a game, right? When they're tops in baseball, a multi-run deficit and a regular, or a 1-run deficit, that they have the wherewithal to come back and win. So that's a huge mental burst for them. So, and a place we're not used to seeing Cincinnati, as you mentioned, 100 losses last year. Now they're in the tightest division race in all of baseball in the NL Central. They lead. Milwaukee's 1.5 back, Cubs 3.5, Pittsburgh 5.5, St. Louis 9. The next closest is the AL Central, where the first 3 are close, but then Kansas City's like 16.5 back. So it's a pretty tight division right now. But right now, man, we're seeing the Reds do something we're not used to them seeing, with some young talent on that team too. So while there's cheering and hope this year, there's got to be hope for the future as well with some of the young stars they have.
You think about Cincinnati in general, which is an awesome sports town. If you go downtown, that area between the baseball stadium and between Paul Brown, where the football team plays, it's a really awesome place to be when it's rocking. And you've got, like you mentioned, Ellie De La Cruz is one of the most exciting young players in sports right now. Phenomenal athletic talent. You've got all the young pieces led by Joe Burrow on the Bengals. The Cincinnati Bearcats in college are getting ready to make the move to the Big 12. Everything coming up Cincy right now. One of the many queen cities in the United States and home of my favorite ice cream on planet Earth. So good on all of them. Glad to see it going so well for them. Dad, let's stick with baseball and get to that. We got a big one coming up. Rubber match in the College World Series between LSU and #1 overall seed in the Men's College World Series, Wake Forest, after LSU forced this 3rd and final game for them today. And it should give us an absolute banger of a pitching matchup that's going to include, from LSU side, a guy in Paul Skeens who has been skyrocketing up draft boards and looks like he could absolutely be a top pick overall in Major League Baseball's draft. Dad, he's a 6'6", 247-pound transfer from Air Force who throws 100-mile-an-hour gas consistently, and looks like Taylor Lewand out on the mound was dynamite earlier when they played Tennessee, and now is going to get a chance in the biggest game of their season to go and probably be the one that decides it again.
Again, what I think is the hardest thing to do in sports is to hit a baseball from stud pitchers like this, or in obviously a Major League Baseball. But just imagine standing in the batter's box and seeing a man this size winding up and firing it over 100 miles an hour at you or in your general vicinity. And the ability when people say, oh, I could go hit this, or I could hit a ball from one of these big time pitchers. I would just love to see that regular person in the batter's box. It reminds me of a guy from your class and a friend of ours, from the Long family, Kyle Long. Remember, Kyle Long went to Florida State as a pitcher before he became an all-pro guard in the NFL after the winding world he had in baseball to football. This dude was 6'7", and like 290 in high school as a lefty off the mound. Could you fathom guys that big just with that wind up and the pitch coming at you? It's got to be horrifying.
It's absolutely maddening. And that really is the perfect comp in this situation. that throwing triple digits at you consistently, listening to the announcers in the College World Series drool over this guy, Dad, is just like that. They've never seen anything like it. They all think he could walk into a major league team tomorrow and be a viable part of the rotation. Dad, when he transferred over from Air Force, because there were some questions about would he be able to pursue his professional baseball future while also honoring his military commitment there,
right,
which when you listen and read and talk to him, it means a lot to him. He said at some point when he's done playing pro ball, he wants to serve his country and figure out a way to do that. But when he was over at Air Force, he was also a catcher. They said there were games where for the first 8 innings, he would go out there and catch for the team and then come in the 9th and close out the game as a pitcher. So it's been an incredible winding road and story that got him to this point. He's, again, I always say it, one of my favorite things in sports are oddities, physical outliers who can do things the rest of us could never dream of. And this is certainly a guy that does that. So very excited to watch that. College World Series, Dad, I've never really watched a ton of it. Did you ever, in all the years you covered sports, did you guys ever get to go out to Omaha or see any of this? Because after watching it on screen this year, I want to try and figure out a way to get to Omaha next year. It looks like a blast. And the whole thing, despite me watching no college baseball during the regular season, has been a ton of fun.
I think the College World Series, both men's and women's side, is so much fun to watch. It has its own time, right? It's so wild to think that after this College World Series, some of the players that are still in school don't have much more of a break before they're going back to school again. But they're the headline right now, right? I mean, hockey's over, basketball's over, so they're the headline. I really got going on the College World Series, quite honestly, Mike, growing up. My dad, your grandpa Lou, who passed away years ago, he watched this he loved watching the College World Series. So I would sit around as a kid and we would watch it together. And that's where I got my real first introduction into it before having to talk about it for a living. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think road trips to Middle America next year to watch baseball and softball are going to have to pop up on the DraftKings calendar there. So expect those business expenses coming in, Jeff and Stacy. Should be a good time. Let's get to the third, Dad. Massive news, speaking of sports, that I am excited to consume at rapid pace. Slamball is coming back. Slamball, if anyone missed it, trampoline basketball that stole the hearts and minds of America in the early 2000s has now agreed to a 2-year media rights deal with ESPN that'll provide unprecedented national reach to the sport. It'll be shown on ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPN Plus during the 23 and 24 seasons. Play is going to start this year, July 21st, with more than 30 hours of live coverage shown, concluding August 17th to 19th with playoffs and title games. Dad, you and I obviously were both very aware when Slamball first came around here. It's a bunch of compound fractures waiting to happen. I am terrified of what might happen, but I will be front and center ready to watch this with I'll get out in front of it right now. I would never play, would never even think about playing. The thought of it terrifies me. The people that do are those guys that used to in high school run down on kickoff at R4 and throw themselves through the wedge. Y'all are built different than me. I don't have that in me.
This is one of those, I am with you. I will be front and center watching it, but this is a sport you watch with your hand up close to your eyes, and you're just waiting to cover your eyes. Because with these guys, I mean, it looks unbelievable what they're doing until their leg snaps in half. And then that's when you got to cover your eyes real quick because it's going to happen. And you're right. I mean, there's a place around here where you go on the trampolines and do stuff. And every time I pass it, I shudder thinking about what would happen to my lower body if I tried to do any of this. So these guys, and I mean, so they're in a competition, so they're fighting to make plays out there and buckets out there and obviously slam the ball. But it is just a lower body snap waiting to happen that just turns my stomach when I think about it.
It's basically if you tried to bring NBA jams to life with the heightened absurdity of the plays, and then you did it just completely forsaking the safety of people that are far lesser athletes. Oh. I cannot wait. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out on YouTube and DraftKingsNetwork.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Boom. Money in the bank.